Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the dusty sands and quiet corners of ancient Egypt to explore something a little unexpected, the very first pet cemetery ever known to humans. You might think, pet cemetery? Really? Yes, really. Imagine walking past a line of tiny stone markers, each one for a cat, dog, or maybe even a monkey, all tucked neatly into the sand, as if their owners whispered, "You shall not be forgotten." And just so you know, if you're thinking about wandering off into the desert without sunscreen, you might not survive the first day, so stay close. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, leave a comment below, telling me your city and the exact time where you are right now. It makes this journey feel a little more personal. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step carefully over the golden sand, the Nile a faint, silvery line in the distance. The first markers you notice are small tiny gravestones, carved carefully with images of cats. Some stretch lazily, others sit alert, as if waiting for their owner to return with some fish or bread. Historians are still debating whether these carvings were mostly symbolic or literal depictions of the pets' personalities. But you can't help but imagine a little cat stalking invisible mice in these eternal scenes. A few meters away, a dog's grave catches your eye. Tiny paws etched into stone, ears perked up in some imagined alertness, and a faint outline of a collar hint at the care the owner once lavished on this companion. Archaeologists found tiny bowls of food beside some of these graves, and while some think it was purely ceremonial, others argue that Egyptians genuinely believed pets could carry sustenance into the afterlife. You crouch down, imagining the soft pads of paws pressing against your hand, and feel a warm tug of familiarity, the same love humans have shared with animals for millennia. You notice that some graves include little amulets, shaped like fish or birds. Oddly enough, some of these amulets are tiny, delicate, and clearly ornamental rather than functional. Scholars still argue whether these were purely symbolic gestures of affection or intended as magical protection for the pet's spirits. You trace the carvings with your fingertip, appreciating the detail. And you can almost hear a distant giggle, perhaps the ghost of a playful kitten chasing its own tail. In the next cluster, a cat lies beside a small monkey. The monkey is wearing a tiny bracelet carved from gold, delicate, and shining faintly in the moonlight. You imagine the mischievous adventures these two might have had in life. The monkey stealing fruit from baskets, while the cat pretended to nap. Academic debate continues over whether monkeys were common household pets or luxury companions in ancient Egypt. But standing here, it's clear that affection and humor transcended species. You feel a soft pull in your chest, as if the tiny spirits are acknowledging your presence, welcoming you into their quiet little world. As you wander further, you notice the placement of each grave seems intentional. Rows of animals arranged like family trees. Some have small inscriptions, perhaps telling a story of how the pet helped catch mice, accompanied the owner on short trips, or simply comforted them during long desert days. Oddly, a few graves feature birds perched on tiny pedestals, wings folded as if in silent meditation. Historians debate whether birds were included for symbolic reasons or because they were actual companions. You pause, imagining a parakeet softly chirping in the sun, blending its song with the whisper of the Nile breeze. You find yourself at a larger mound, now surrounded by intricately carved stones. Tiny statues of cats and dogs line the edges, some perched like sentinels, others curled in eternal repose. One small tablet depicts a dog leaping through papyrus reeds. You imagine this dog alive, bounding with energy, chasing the wind along the riverbank. Scholars are still divided on whether these scenes were literal depictions or symbolic representations of the pet's afterlife adventures. But the charm is undeniable. Beside it, a small monkey's grave draws your attention. The monkey wears a miniature gold chain, suggesting some families lavished extraordinary attention on their primate companions. You imagine the monkey swinging from rafters, stealing fruits, perhaps causing gentle mischief. The inclusion of primates in pet cemeteries is still debated. Some scholars believe they were rare and prized. Others think they were more common. Either way, it makes you smile to see care and love etched in stone. You wander to a curious set of graves arranged like a council of animals. Cats, dogs, and a few birds appear to converse silently, frozen in stone. It's oddly comforting, and you laugh quietly imagining their meetings each night under the Egyptian sky. Some historians argue this arrangement reflects ritual or social symbolism, while others insist it's just artistic whimsy. You lean in, noticing tiny details, paw positions, feather textures, faint traces of color, once applied centuries ago. A playful dog's grave contains a carved toy ball. You can't help but imagine it fetching this ball for its owner in life. Historians debate whether such toys were ritualistic or sentimental. But the idea of a dog enjoying its playthings is universal. Nearby, an elaborate section reserved for cats of distinguished owners shows them wearing tiny collars with bells. These ancient fashion statements, scholars argue, could indicate status or simply human affection. You pause, laughing at the thought of a little Egyptian cat strutting through the sands with its bell jingling. The next courtyard is filled with stone effigies of pets, lying serenely. Birds, monkeys, even a tortoise share the space, each carefully arranged as if part of a family portrait. Debate remains on whether the layout reflects religious hierarchy, social symbolism, or simply the preferences of grieving owners. You run a fingertip along a smooth stone surface and feel the gentle weight of millennia pressing softly against your imagination. Even in this stillness, life, love, and remembrance feel vividly present. You come upon a tiny courtyard where the smallest graves lie. Cats curl beside modest stones, birds nest silently in carved niches, and little dogs rest beside miniature toys. Some graves are gilded, others simple and unadorned. Scholars debate whether mummification and adornments reflect status or pure sentimentality. You imagine an owner whispering farewells long ago, love eternal, undiminished by time. A miniature lion statue rests nearby, meticulously carved with every tuft of mane in detail. Historians argue whether these sculptures represent actual pets, symbolic guardians, or fantastical imaginings. You crouch down and let your imagination wander. A tiny lion prowling the Nile banks, regal yet cherished. The sense of care is palpable, reminding you of how universal human affection for animals has always been. Small clusters of graves suggest familial groupings. Some pets are buried with toys, collars, or amulets. Scholars still debate whether these were ceremonial, symbolic, or playful. You kneel by a turtle grave, imagining it slowly making its way through life, and realize that every creature, regardless of size, was honored. The quiet dignity of this tiny community is moving. Further along, a cat sits atop a pedestal, paws extended in eternal greeting. Surrounding it are symbols of sustenance and protection, tiny sandals, and perhaps even offerings meant to nourish the spirit. Debate continues, ritual, symbolic, or whimsical. You run your fingers over the stone, imagining the cat alive, purring softly, utterly serene. The devotion of the Egyptians to their pets is undeniable. You pause at a final courtyard in this section, where graves are simple yet intimate. A kitten curls beside a marker, a bird rests under a larger monument, a small dog lies with its worn toy. You sit in the sand, inhaling the night air, feeling the presence of countless creatures, remembered and loved. The desert hums softly around you, and you realize you've stepped into a world where care and memory transcend centuries. As the night deepens, you approach a central area filled with intricately carved pets. Some cats are adorned with jewelry, others with protective amulets. Dogs are depicted in motion, leaping, running, hunting. Oddly, some graves show pets with tiny food bowls. Historians debate whether these were ritual or literal. You crouch beside a tiny effigy, imagining the joy and playfulness of its life. Nearby, a monkey's grave shows a miniature staff, hinting at companionship and status. Scholars remain divided on whether primates were common pets or symbols of wealth. You trace the carvings, envisioning the mischievous monkey in life. Perhaps stealing fruit, perhaps causing laughter. The attention to detail is remarkable, even centuries later. A row of effigies shows birds perched silently, wings folded, a tiny world captured in stone. Debate persists, ceremonial, symbolic, or simply aesthetic. You imagine a real bird's soft chirp harmonizing with the desert breeze. Cats, dogs, birds, they are all here, and their owner's love endures. You notice a dog resting beside a carved ball, clearly a play item. You can almost hear the joyous barks. Imagine tiny paws chasing the toy across sand and reed mats. Historians argue the significance, ritual, remembrance, or sentimental decoration. It doesn't matter. You feel the affection and joy. The next courtyard features elaborate cat graves, collars jingling faintly in imagination. Scholars debate if jewelry indicated status or affection. You just see playful elegance. A cat statue atop a pedestal seems to nod at you, a small greeting from beyond time. You smile, letting the warmth of care wash over you. A smaller courtyard houses the quietest, simplest graves. Tiny cats, dogs, and birds rest in calm repose. Some stones are gilded, some plain. Scholars argue about hierarchy, symbolism, or ritual, but you sense intimacy and affection. A carved monkey statue wears a bracelet. You imagine it swinging through rafters, stealing fruit, its owner laughing gently. Academic debate continues over primate pets, but here, love and humor are clear. A line of effigies shows animals frozen in motion, gathering as if for a nightly council. Scholars dispute whether this was ceremonial or artistic whimsy. You imagine them chatting quietly, planning their eternal adventures. Nearby, a cat rests with a tiny collar and bell. Bells jingled with each step, a playful, ancient echo. Debate persists, symbolic, status, or affection. You just feel warmth. A dog grave features a toy ball, likely a cherished plaything. Historians debate the ritual versus sentimental significance. You imagine the dog bounding happily, tail wagging, chasing joy into eternity. Finally, small family clusters appear. Cats, dogs, birds, monkeys, each honored, each remembered. The desert night hums softly. You sit, inhaling tranquility, feeling the weightless presence of companions, long gone, but lovingly preserved. You step into a sun-bleached courtyard where the smallest cats are buried alongside tiny clay bowls. Some bowls still show faint traces of paint, likely to represent offerings of milk or water. Scholars argue whether these offerings were meant to sustain the pets in the afterlife or simply express the owner's affection. You bend down and touch the bowls, imagining kittens, licking them, noses twitching with curiosity. Beside them, a dog's grave has a carefully carved leash etched into the stone, suggesting that even in death, the bond between pet and owner was celebrated. Archaeologists discovered similar leashes in several cemeteries, and debate persists on whether they were symbolic or practical. You laugh quietly, picturing a dog tugging its leash, trying to take its human for a walk across the Nile banks. Some graves are oddly shaped, resembling miniature houses or shrines. Scholars are divided on whether these served a religious function or were merely decorative. You walk slowly past them, imagining tiny cats perched on the thresholds, surveying their tiny stone homes, as if inspecting their real-world territory. Even the smallest detail, the tilt of a roof or the carving of a door, makes you feel connected to their ancient lives. A curious bird's grave stands out. The wings are slightly extended, feathers carved with meticulous precision. Historians debate whether these birds were intended as companions, symbols of freedom, or ritual messengers to the gods. You imagine the bird in life, fluttering around a sunlit courtyard, chirping with delight. Somehow, the stillness of its grave makes the imagined motion feel more vivid, more alive. Nearby, a monkey's tiny grave shows signs of gilding. The metal has dulled, but you can see where the sun once caught on its surface, making it shine. Scholars are unsure if gilding indicated status, ritual significance, or pure human whimsy. You crouch down and imagine a small hand patting the monkey's head, offering treats while it swings playfully from a rope. For a moment, you forget the centuries separating you. A larger area opens before you, where the pet graves are arranged almost like a town square. Dogs and cats sit in rows, some resting beside small carved furniture, perhaps tiny thrones or benches. Debate continues. Were these grave furnishings literal, meant to provide comfort in the afterlife, or symbolic of the owner's love? You pause, imagining a cat lounging on a miniature throne, regal yet mischievous. Alongside these, A dog's effigy stretches mid-leap, chasing an unseen prey. You feel as if you can almost see its fur ripple in the desert breeze. Scholars argue that these dynamic poses represented the energy of the animal's spirit rather than their physical form. You grin, picturing a dog leaping joyfully, oblivious to centuries that would pass before you discovered its resting place. A cluster of bird graves shows small nests beside each stone. Some nests contain tiny carved eggs. Historians debate whether this reflects the bird's actual life habits or symbolic fertility. You crouch to peer closer, imagining a tiny winged creature, tilting its head curiously at your presence. The desert night seems to hum softly in response, carrying the faint whisper of ancient chirps. You notice a particularly intricate cat grave, with a bell still delicately carved on its collar. Scholars debate if bells were practical, used to track pets, or purely symbolic for protection. You reach out to trace the etching, imagining a tiny jingling sound accompanying every stealthy step. Even now, centuries later, the small joy seems to ripple across time. Nearby, a monkey's grave includes a carved fruit basket. Debate persists. Was it meant as sustenance for the afterlife, a playful nod to its habits, or a combination? You imagine a little monkey, deftly swiping dates from baskets, chattering in delight, and feel the playful spirit lingering softly in the stones. You wander into a quiet courtyard where the smallest pets are laid out in intimate rows. Tiny cats, diminutive dogs, even birds and turtles, each grave carefully decorated with symbols and carvings. Scholars debate whether the arrangement reflects hierarchy, ritual, or owner preference. You kneel in the sand and imagine the pets' lives, their quiet purring, playful barks, gentle chirps, and soft scuttling. A curious sight, a dog's grave includes a carved bone on a pedestal. Some historians argue this is purely symbolic. Others say it reflects real play habits. You imagine the dog gnawing joyfully, ears perked up, tail wagging. The timelessness of this simple joy is somehow comforting. A cluster of cat graves features small amulets of fish. Debate remains on whether these were spiritual offerings, protective charms, or mere decorations. You bend down to observe the intricate detail, feeling the owner's enduring affection. Somehow, the centuries don't feel so long. The love remains tangible. Nearby, a bird grave is surrounded by miniature carvings of reeds and water. Scholars continue to debate whether these reflected the bird's natural environment or had ritual significance. You picture the bird soaring above the Nile, wings spread wide, free in both life and memory. A small monkey's grave includes carved sandals. Some debate whether these are symbolic of journey, status, or owner whimsy. You crouch to imagine a tiny primate stepping gingerly, curiously inspecting the world. There's a quiet humor in the details, a subtle playfulness that spans millennia. You step into a courtyard that seems almost like a miniature village of pets. Cats lounge on carved mats, dogs lie beside miniature toys, birds perch on tiny pedestals. Scholars debate whether this layout represents ritualistic order or aesthetic whimsy. You smile, imagining a silent meeting of animal spirits, sharing stories of the day they lived. A dog's grave depicts it with a playful expression, mouth open as if barking softly. Debate persists, expressive artistic choice or literal capture of temperament. You imagine a happy bark echoing softly across the centuries. Next to it, a cat grave includes an intricately carved yarn ball. Some historians argue this represents play, others ritual. You picture a kitten batting at it, tiny claws swiping and pawing in joyous abandon. A monkey's grave nearby shows a miniature reed swing. Scholars debate whether this reflects leisure or ceremonial symbolism. You imagine the monkey swinging in delight, tail curling around a tiny carved branch, utterly carefree. Bird graves include small, delicately etched nests with eggs. Debate continues, symbolic fertility, real-life habits, or a mix. You imagine a gentle chorus of chirps as dusk settles, harmonizing with the desert breeze. Finally, a tortoise grave is placed beside small carved leaves. Historians argue whether it's literal or symbolic. You crouch to trace the details, imagining slow, deliberate movement, the calm presence of a life well remembered. You reach a larger ceremonial courtyard, where pets of prominent families are laid to rest. Cats adorned with collars of gilded stone, dogs with etched leashes, birds perched majestically. Scholars debate whether elaborate decorations indicated social status or pure affection. You pause, absorbing the grandeur and love evident in every stone. A monkey's grave gleams faintly under moonlight, showing detailed gold leaf patterns. Debate continues. Status, symbol, or protective charm. You imagine the mischievous primate, swinging gracefully, stealing fruit with glee. You notice an unusual arrangement: cats, dogs, and birds, positioned as if sharing a silent conversation. Some historians argue it's symbolic of social hierarchy. Others think it's artistic whimsy. You crouch to imagine a playful council of pets, quietly plotting or sharing stories. Nearby, a dog grave features a carved chew toy, almost lifelike. Debate persists: ceremonial offering or actual plaything. You imagine the dog bounding joyfully, chasing it across a sandy courtyard. A cluster of cat graves includes small bells, amulets, and even tiny carved food dishes. Scholars argue ritual, status, or sentimental display. You imagine a tiny cat stretching, tail curling around its paws, and feel the warmth of human affection across the centuries. You wander into a quieter corner of the cemetery, where the stones are smaller and simpler. Cats curl beside delicate carvings of fish. Dogs rest near carved bones. Birds perched on tiny stone nests. Scholars debate whether the simplicity indicates lower social status or simply personal preference. You crouch down and imagine these pets in life, purring, barking softly, chirping, each sound as familiar as your own heartbeat. A tiny monkey grave gleams faintly with traces of gold. Historians argue whether this represents wealth, ritual, or playful affection. You imagine the monkey leaping from perch to perch, a mischievous sparkle in its eyes. Its presence feels palpable despite the centuries. Some cats' graves include carved collars with bells. Debate continues: protective charm, status symbol, or sentimental gesture. You reach out to trace the tiny etchings, imagining the soft jingling accompanying a quiet stroll through ancient streets. The warmth of care is timeless. Nearby, a dog grave shows the animal mid-leap, captured in motion. Scholars argue if this reflects the dog's personality or symbolic vitality. You picture a tail wagging joyfully, bounding across sand, ears flapping in delight. The energy of life persists even in stone. Birds' graves include nests filled with eggs delicately carved. Debate remains whether this reflects actual habits or symbolic fertility. You crouch close, imagining a gentle dawn chorus as sunlight brushes the desert horizon. It feels alive, serene, comforting. The path winds into a shaded area lined with larger memorials. Cats recline on pedestals, dogs stretch beside carved toys, and birds perch on tiny columns. Scholars are still debating whether the placement reflects ritualistic hierarchy, aesthetic planning, or personal preference. You pause to absorb the careful attention to detail. A monkey's grave displays a miniature fruit basket, some fruits gilded faintly. Debate continues: literal sustenance, symbolic offering, or whimsical decoration. You imagine the monkey playfully snatching fruit, chattering softly, utterly carefree. In one row, cats with tiny carved collars sit alert, ears pricked as if listening to a distant sound. Historians argue whether this was a symbolic gesture of watchfulness or literal observation. You lean in, imagining them stalking invisible mice, graceful and patient. Nearby, a dog's grave includes a carved ball mid-bounce. Debate: ceremonial, playful, or symbolic. You imagine it bounding joyfully, chasing the air. Its spirit animated. The joy of life seems to echo across millennia, reassuring and warm. A bird's grave shows wings slightly extended, a soft capture of motion. Scholars debate whether this reflects freedom, ritual, or artistry. You picture it lifting off the ground, soaring silently, an eternal reminder of life's lightness. You enter a more expansive section, almost like a small park of remembrance. Cats, dogs, monkeys, birds, all arranged in careful proximity. Some stones show traces of paint, amulets, and intricate carvings. Scholars debate whether these embellishments signify wealth, ritual, or affection. You crouch and take in the textures, the soft curves imagining pets as lively as ever. A dog grave features an elaborately carved leash. Debate persists, symbolic or practical. You picture the dog tugging its owner, playful and insistent, full of life. Bird graves include tiny nests and carved eggs. Scholars argue, fertility symbols, ritual, or literal homage. You imagine the gentle rustle of wings, soft as a lullaby, carrying across centuries. A monkey's grave shows a small swing. Some scholars argue symbolism, others literal play items. You imagine the monkey leaping joyfully, tail curling, utterly free. Cats' graves feature collars and bells. Debate continues, protective, status-related, or sentimental. You picture the jingling accompanying a quiet stroll, soft as a heartbeat. Finally, a tortoise rests under carved leaves. Scholars debate if this reflects slow, deliberate life or symbolic patience. You run a fingertip over the etchings, imagining calm, steady movement through sunlit sands. The cemetery narrows into intimate rows, graves of beloved pets, tightly grouped. Cats nestle beside dogs, monkeys beside birds. Scholars debate the significance, ritual, familial grouping, or artistic choice. You imagine playful interactions, a silent harmony in stone. A dog's grave shows a carved toy mid-play. Debate persists, practical, ceremonial, or sentimental. You imagine soft barks, energetic leaps, pure joy frozen in imagination. Cats' graves include tiny fish amulets. Scholars argue whether symbolic or literal offerings. You imagine a kitten pawing playfully, nose twitching with curiosity. Bird graves with nests and eggs remain controversial, symbolic fertility or life homage. You crouch to trace details, imagining wings fluttering softly, adding a gentle song to the desert hush. A monkey's grave displays a miniature fruit basket. Debate, sustenance, symbolism, or whimsy. You picture tiny hands snatching fruit, chattering, the spirit vibrant even in stillness. Finally, a quiet tortoise rests beside carved leaves. Scholars debating symbolism or tribute. You lean in, breathing in calm, feeling the peace of a life well remembered. You reach the final area, a serene stretch of sand with graves of all sizes. Cats curl on pedestals, dogs stretch beside carved toys, monkeys perch, elegantly. Birds rest in stone nests. Scholars continue to debate ritual significance versus sentimental expression. You pause, feeling the gentle weight of history and the quiet devotion of ancient owners. A dog's grave features a ball carved mid-motion. Debate persists, playful or ceremonial. You imagine the dog chasing, barking softly, a timeless echo. Cats' graves include collars and tiny bells. Debate, protective, status, or affection. You picture a kitten stretching, jingling softly, alive in memory. Bird graves with delicately carved nests remain ambiguous, ritual or homage. You imagine wings lifting in slow flight, brushing softly against time itself. A monkey's grave shows gilded fruit baskets, a playful nod to its life. Debate persists, yet the joy is unmistakable. You imagine it leaping and chattering, fully alive in your imagination. Finally, you see a tortoise resting beside carved leaves, deliberate and serene. Scholars argue symbolism or tribute. You trace the carvings and feel the calm settling over you. The desert stretches infinitely, moonlight brushing every stone, every pet, every carefully etched memory. You sit quietly, feeling the soft hum of time, the gentle whisper of sand. Cats, dogs, birds, monkeys, tortoises, they all rest peacefully, yet somehow remain vibrant in your mind's eye. The air feels cool, almost musical, as if each breath carries a faint echo of purrs, barks, and chirps from centuries past. You let your eyelids grow heavy, your imagination painting slow, soft movements across the sands. Each creature remembered, loved, and honored floats gently in the quiet. You feel warmth in your chest, a subtle pull of serenity, and the world narrows to this peaceful desert cemetery, glowing under moonlight. Softly, your mind drifts, carried by invisible paws and wings, and you realize, even as night deepens, love endures. You exhale slowly, letting tension fade, your heart light, Your body calm, sleep approaches like a gentle tide, drawing you in, wrapping you in quiet remembrance and tender care. The animals watch over you, just as you've watched over their stories tonight.